Hello, I'm Andrew Hollis, and welcome back to another episode of Making Waves. We have a special guest with us today who is literally making waves in the water industry. I'm honored to introduce Dean as our guest today. Dean has served as the first president and CEO of the Water Council since March of 2010. Headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Water Council was formed in 2009 to drive economic, technology, and talent development to support the global water industry. The organization conveys global water leaders and supports businesses, utilities, government agencies, education programs, and nonprofits with valuable services, programming, and networking opportunities. Slater Infrastructure Group is also a proud member of the Water Council and its growing global community. So just want to start off by thanking you, Dean, for joining us today. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about the idea behind the Water Council.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to join you as well. And of course, we're really pleased to have Slater, one of our members and a long-term member. So it's great to be able to keep that connection going and strengthening as well. And it's interesting is how we came about as an organization. We literally stumbled upon it. And this was going back probably 15 years ago, when the region within Milwaukee was going through an assessment of what were the industries within the 7 counties. And many of the industries were not surprises, but one of them was, and it was around water technology. And why it was a surprise from a simple standpoint is there is no business code for water technology. There's codes for biotech and manufacturing, but there's nothing that specifically says water. And so we had been working with a firm within Wisconsin, and they looked around in the region and they saw all these companies like a Kohler, A.O. Smith, Badger Meter, Incinerator, that had at its heart water in some aspects of dealing and treating water, both on water quality and water quantity. And once we started getting into it, we found that there were about 50 businesses in an hour-and-a-half drive region. And as we started getting deeper and deeper into this, we discovered there were 120, and we're now at about 240 water technology companies within that region. But since that time, and as evidenced, engagement with Slater, we've expanded our scope. So we've got members across the United States, we've got European members and partnerships as well. But it's not only the businesses, it's also universities that we have here, really outstanding utilities that do some amazing things that are open to new technologies and to be able to integrate that into their own operations. So that was kind of how it all came about. We literally stumbled upon it, and it's taken off since then.
Yeah, I mean, it really has taken off since then. We're very happy to be a part of the Water Council and its overall endearing mission. To that point, maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about the main facility in Milwaukee.
Well, early on, when we started going, as I said, we knew that we had these water technology companies that were here. They were mostly larger ones, and they had headquarters, either their global headquarters or their U.S. headquarters that were here. They were medium-sized businesses. But one of the things that we did see that we were missing were smaller businesses. And those are the businesses that really need the additional help. There's not much we can necessarily do for the Kohlers or the A.O. Smiths or the Badger Meters, but what they do want is they want to meet the smaller companies. And those smaller companies want to meet the big ones. So we've really put an emphasis on what can we do to be a nucleus to attract and engage with those small businesses. And early on, we really came to the determination is that we needed to have a place for people to come to and to be able to connect. And that was really the roots of what is now the Global Water Center, which we opened, it's almost hard to believe, 10 years ago, this coming September. So it's been an interesting ride, but it is an old warehouse that we converted into a facility that engages small businesses But we've even got right now Badger Meter that's here. Xylem has their operations. Their sanitary division is located here as well. And it certainly serves as a nucleus again for companies across the world to be able to come here, get connected, and to be able to engage with each other as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, you guys have been really instrumental to kind of helping the international community to make a breakthrough into the United States. So what would you, or at least what would the organization consider exactly what water, or define what water stewardship is?
Yeah, so early on when we got started, our clear focus was around water technology, and that continues to be the case.
Mhm.
And again, as I said, we talk about water quality and water quantity, and on that quantity side, it's not enough water and too much water, and being able to foster an environment and advance an environment that really builds that technology connection, helping entrepreneurs, helping small businesses like Slater to be able to get, advance their missions as an organization. But we also saw at that time there was a real need around water stewardship, to your question. And these are companies that are not in the water tech area, but use water as part of their operations. So that may be in food and beverage, petrochemical, automobile industry. I mean, you name it, every single business requires water, even in the hospitality industry as well.
True.
So as we got underway as an organization, we started to work with the group called the Alliance for Water Stewardship,
Mhm.
which was in the process of developing an international water standard. And we helped that along here in North America. And then about 6, 7 years ago, we served as their North American partner in the United States to really advance that program. And it's a great program. It's a program that looks site by site for a company and really to develop their water stewardship plan and mission. But one thing that we saw in early 2020, and a board member had approached us and said, you guys better start paying attention to this thing called ESG, or environmental social governance. And it had been happening quite a bit in Europe, that greater attention around climate change and the impact. A lot of that focus was certainly on carbon and greenhouse gases, but we really saw that there was going to be a growing demand around ESG back in 2020. So we certainly paid attention to that. And the other thing that we focused on was that while the AWS standard is great, for a site, specific, there's only so many businesses that can do that. And if you've got 100 facilities, that can be really challenging for them. And many of these businesses just need to get started and move through this process to begin their journey. As I kind of describe it, is before we can ask somebody to run an ultra marathon, we have to help them crawl and walk and run. And that's what we've developed with the WAVE program. And we launched that a little over a year ago to really help businesses develop their water stewardship journey, look at their complete enterprise. And if they can move to that element of a point of doing a site by site, fantastic. But we really believe that there are so many businesses out there that just need that first step to get started and to realize that there is true value. So as they go through this WAVE program, they can use it as part of their ESG reporting or their sustainability report. But more importantly, it's really looking at their water risk. And I think that's critical, is if they can see that we can reduce risks, they can actually improve their financial bottom line.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good point, that, as you kind of address that risk and improve upon water usage, it can overall lower typical OpEx for
Right.
some of these giant firms. So,
Yeah, and I think, if I can add on to that too, is, a lot of times people are thinking about carbon, and rightly so. It's a big issue. And it's a very, it's impact financially in terms of energy. But, as somebody else has said, Gary White, I think it was from water.org, is water is really the canary in the coal mine when it comes to climate change, because it's happening right now. And we've obviously experienced that here in the United States, whether it's the floods or the droughts. And it's really becoming, driving home, and businesses have to respond on this because they could be at serious risk for their operations on, whether they're going to be able to, put out product, or if they are getting supplies from some other place, that supply chain could be impacted as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, so how can companies, I mean, I know that you mentioned a little bit earlier about it, but continually drive overall improvement? Are there any other specific ways that you can kind of see that maybe we haven't listed already?
Well, I think, one of the things that, and this is something that we've learned again as well, is that a lot of times when we got started up, those entrepreneurs and small businesses were looking at utilities as their market in terms of the water tech space. Very important market for them. But one of the things we kept on stressing is, in addition to looking at those utilities, you really need to look at those large water users. And I think, we all know utilities are slow to make decisions. It's an arduous process to go through that. And what we found is businesses are going to be much more receptive if you've got a solution. Because, as I said earlier, they may be looking at a facility that's literally going to be shut down. And if you got an answer, I'm going to pay for it and I'm going to buy it now because I need it to keep my business open and operating. And so as we started moving down this increasing path around water stewardship and working with users of water, the natural question they come up with as once they just start discovering their sort of water risks, they're looking for the technologies. And so that's kind of one of the things that we are sort of evolving to, is making that connection between the stewardship and the innovation. So companies like Slater as well is, we learn of some business who says, listen, I need some additional help on our issues. That's not what we're going to do. That's what our members are going to do, like Slater Infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, you kind of gotten into some of the benefits of making these improvements, but what are some of the overall costs to an action for these companies to not adapt?
Yeah. Well, and that's, really accurate is, of course, a lot of times people are going to say, wow, that's a lot of upfront costs that I'm going to have to deal with to address this. I would simply say, do you really want to risk this your facility being shut down? And let me give you an example of this. I think it was a year or so ago, Abbott, who makes baby formula, there was a whole supply chain issue around, the formula getting out to, families, operation in Michigan. And, they were really struggling with, going and getting that out. They got up to speed. They started the operation, started moving, and all of a sudden they got hit with a flood. And they had to shut the operation down for, I think, another week or so. Mm-hmm. The damage, the lost revenue that occurred, the reputational risk was really dramatic. And so as companies start looking at this, you really have to look at those other longer term risks that you can address. And I'll give another example as one of the companies that's gone through our process. They've got operations around the world. Many of them are very, very similar in terms of their operations. But they noticed one facility in a country, and I won't name the country at all, but for some reason, it was using a a lot more water than all the other locations. And what they came to discover was that the company that was delivering them the water was actually stealing the water as well. And so here's a huge risk to this company and going through this process and this awareness as well. So you've got to look at the risks of losing product, losing customers, losing employees. That has to be all factored in when you start looking at sort of a water stewardship plan and making that investment on that infrastructure on the front end as well.
Yeah, I do like how you kind of brought it back to the fact that it's not only going to affect, obviously, the immediate top line and bottom line, but also something like the intangibles, which is, the reputation of the company, which could have much farther reaching implications at a future point in time. So I think I was very happy that you highlighted that, Dean. So,
well, and in many ways, in many respects, you think of it like an insurance policy.
yeah.
You pay for that because you don't want to, get into a situation where you are going to have devastating costs that could really just kill off a business. Think of it as that way.
Yeah, so I guess the next question to ask is, how can companies start their water stewardship journey with you?
Well, and it's really simple. I mean, obviously, just come to our website. You'll be able to get more information. We've created a special water stewardship website for corporations, so it's just corporatewaterstewardship.com. And I think it's being able to realize that it's really made for any company. So this is not just big companies. We've worked with companies that are in the tool and die business, 20 people. They see benefits as well. But simply, looking at the Water Council, giving us a call, contacting us, and we'd be, really pleased to start talking to them and hook them up and show how easy it is. And it's really a process that can be done in 4 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So it's not, overly taxing, but it's something that begins that journey. And what we believe is once you start that journey and realize there's value, you'll take the next steps to go further with it.
Mm-hmm. So thank you again, Dean, for your time today. And we encourage our listeners to follow the Water Council on social media and stay updated on their latest updates. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate your invitation for me to join you.
No problem. We appreciate it having you on, Dean.